千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. Let's get right into chapter 71 of the Daodejing. And I want to remark right up front that this chapter, as you're going to see, is short. It contains only 7 lines. But as you will also see, the lines are very profound and full of implications and practical applications. I would say that chapter 71 is one of the best examples in the Daodejing to show how Lao Zi can express a world of meaning using very few characters. And the interpretations of those characters are going to be, I think, in a way, mind expanding. So I'm looking forward to that. Let me talk about the chapter title with you. Chapter 71, Without Fault. This requires further explanation because there is a very specific meaning associated with this particular expression. When I say without fault, and perhaps when I call this the without fault chapter, the mind may automatically go to familiar expressions from daily life, like when people say, hey, look, it's not my fault. So I want to be clear with everyone to let you know that when I say without fault in this context, it actually has nothing to do with being blameless. This is not about, oh, so-and-so is not at fault, or this matter, it's not his fault. It's got nothing to do with that. What without fault actually means is that it points to the state of an improved self. That is, when you have recognized and identified a fault that you had before, and you took actions to address that fault, so you no longer have the fault. That's what it means to be without fault. And this is applied to the individual. It's applied to the sages as examples for Tao cultivators. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So first, let's go ahead and read the chapter from beginning to end. Daodejing, chapter 71. To know that you do not know is highest. To not know but think you know is flawed. Only when one recognizes the fault as a fault can one be without fault. The sages are without fault because they recognize the fault as a fault. That is why they are without fault. Now, as you can see, there's quite a few iterations of the expression without fault. And so it seems to make sense that it is the chapter title. This is talking about the sages being without fault and how one can be without fault. And even before we delve into the line-by-line analysis, you can see that to be without fault, you must start with recognition, that is, recognizing the fault as a fault. And that makes sense, because when you do have that recognition, you can then proceed to do something about it. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get back to the proper place in our talk when we go over the structure of this chapter. So, as usual, we start out by looking for the repeating characters in chapter 71. This chapter is different from the other ones out there, the other ones that we have studied, because unlike the other chapters, this particular chapter is going to rely more on meaning of the lines to identify the sectional breaks. Whereas with many of the other chapters, we've been able to identify the breaks simply by the poetic reiteration of characters from one line to the next. Here, I'm going to show you those reiterations in a couple of different ways, and you're going to see that they don't all necessarily follow the scheme that we have seen in the other chapters. Right now, the slide is showing you highlighted character 知 and mapping to the English translation to the right-hand side. So you can see that the character means know, to know. And so even just in the first two lines, it's reiterated 4 times, twice per line. Now there's actually another way to show the reiteration of characters from one line to the next. Let me go to that. So now I have highlighted the characters differently. So what I've done is that I've singled out 不知, which means to not know. And you can see where it maps to the translation on the right-hand side. Now you can see a little better how that's reiterated from first line to the second line. And it may not be immediately obvious only because there is a character in front of it on the first line. It starts on the second character. Either way, these two lines form a unit. It is saying that it is good, it is the best to know that you do not know. That's line 1. And then the reverse, the complement of that is to say, if you don't really know, but you think you know, that's bad. That's the opposite. That forms one thought. And therefore, it is safe for us to identify that as the beginning section. So this is a short chapter, only 7 lines. So only 2 lines are composed of section 1. So what about from line 3 to line 7? Well, let me go ahead and identify one reiteration, which is the 4 repeating characters, 2 iterations in line 3, and 2 in line 6, and they're both occupying the same position, the last 2 characters, the end of the line. And you can see the mapping here, where those 2 characters mean recognizes the fault as a fault, to recognize the fault as a fault. So that's actually important. That's actually the key to understanding this entire chapter. There's a huge amount of misinterpretation out there, and I'll show you what the misinterpretation looks like as well. This is where I can be of service to people who study the Tao by bringing the absolute most accurate information possible to chapter 71. So the 2 characters, being, they mean recognizing a fault as a fault. And understanding, native level understanding of modern Chinese, modern Mandarin, as well as solid understanding of ancient Chinese are both necessary to decipher病 correctly as recognizing the fault as a fault. I will explain. For now, I want to highlight another reiteration. This one, 病 you see it repeated twice in line 3 and line 6. So if you take a look at the other lines that are not yet highlighted, 4, 5, and 7, if you look at the last two characters there, you're going to see that the last two characters are exactly the same. Let me highlight them and show you. So those two characters, 不病. So people think mistakenly that this means not sick. It doesn't say that. It doesn't mean not sick. And there is no ancient or modern expression that uses 不病 to say not sick. Now you can see the mapping to the translation to the right-hand side, and that is without fault. And that's reiterated in 4, 5, and 7. So that is exactly what 不病 actually means. So then how do we divide this up into sections? This is what I mean when I say that we need to depend on the meaning of the lines to help us identify. So line 3 and line 4, you're going to see that in terms of meaning, you're going to see that it's all one thought. Only when one recognizes the fault as a fault can one be without a fault. So that is one section to represent that one thought. Let's go ahead and put a line in place. Then the next 3 lines form a single thought as well. Why? It is because they are all talking about the sages. The sages are without fault because of the reason that they recognize a fault as a fault. That is why they're without fault. So that's the conclusion. And now we have the 3 sections identified for chapter 71. So now we're ready to get into the line-by-line analysis. So line 1 says to know that you do not know is highest. So I've singled out the first 3 characters there, and when I present them below in the explanation, I'm actually breaking them up a little bit. This is the logical division in that sentence in Chinese where the first character stands alone by itself and second and third characters are grouped together. 知不知. So I hope you can hear what I just said. 知不知, there's a slight pause between the first and the second characters. Literally, the 3 characters mean know, not know. So you would join the not and the know together, the second and third. So to know that you don't know, that's exactly what it means. It means realizing that you have an area of ignorance. To become aware that you have a lack of awareness. Another way to say it is that you understand that you have a misunderstanding. You've figured out that you made a mistake somewhere or that you know very little about a particular subject. It can also be self-awareness, like knowing something about yourself or becoming aware that there's a lack of awareness, self-awareness within you. And when you overcome that lack of awareness, you realize something about yourself. So for instance, I may say, hey, I used to think that they were laughing with me, but they were actually laughing at me. So At the time that I did not have that self-awareness, I didn't even know where to look. But then when I started to realize that perhaps what I thought was wrong, that's the realization, that's the beginning of me gaining more self-awareness. Then the fourth character in this line, Shang, is what we're going to explore next. So Shang means high, higher, or highest, depending on context. So when you put it together with the other characters, what it says is that in the Tao, to know that you do not know is the best or the highest. Why is that? Let's talk about the reasons. So when you realize that there's something you do not know, that realization means three things that we can identify. Number one is humility. That is, when you do have that realization, you're actually being humble. You are not a know-it-all. The realization is oftentimes humbling, like, wow, there's so much. There's still so much that I don't understand. I still have a long way to go. I still have a lot to learn. These are all expressions of the truly humble mind, open to new ideas, new learning, new knowledge. So that's the first part, the humility of it. And the second part is what it leads to, which is that, well, it's kind of exciting, isn't it? That is, you have uncovered the possibility of discovering new stuff. This is the exciting part of life. It's when you say, hey, look at this. Here's something new. Perhaps it is something unexpected. It is something fascinating. And when I say fascinating, if you think about the curious scientist, always curious about the world, always curious about the natural laws that govern our existence, when they see something that warrants further exploration and investigation, they may say, fascinating. That's what this is. It is intriguing. It is something that catches your attention. It's not the same old, what you already know about, but more like, hey, what is this? What have we here? These are indicators that you have entered the realm of possibilities. So your senses come alive. You're looking every which way to try to figure out what's going on. So that's great. That means you are being alive. Now let's go to number three, closely related, is that the excitement of that discovery is motivation to learn more about that, to go deeper into it, to find out, to figure stuff out. So the motivation is, hey, I get to add to what I know, reduce what I don't know. I get to illuminate the darkness in the areas of knowledge that I have. This is the process of how you and I become more knowledgeable or wiser in life. So these are the reasons why Lao Tzu would say to know that you do not know is highest, but there's more. So when we put it together, slight pauses in between the first and second character there, and then a slight pause between the third and fourth. 知不知上. Know that you don't know, best. Now, take a moment to consider how this compares with the alternatives, because we don't always know that we do not know. Sometimes we know what we know. That is, we're pretty confident about knowing something. We have mastery of a particular subject, genuine mastery, not just, bluffing, not anything half-assed, but just genuine knowledge that we possess. So that's good. It's a good thing to know that, hey, this is what I know. To be certain, to have no doubt about it. It's good to be in the know, but it's got to be pointed out that this is a static state. That is, a static state is one that doesn't change. It doesn't go anywhere. Although it's a good state to be in to know something, it's even better to know that you do not know because it's a dynamic state instead of a static state. It means when you know that you do not know, you can have positive change. You can move from ignorance to knowledge. You can change yourself for your own benefit or advantage. A static state doesn't offer that possibility. It isn't bad, it's just not as great as when you have the dynamic possibility for changing yourself for the better. So that's one possibility that is an alternative to know that you do not know. What's another one? You don't know what you don't know. Okay, so this is the unknown unknowns. There are things that you are not aware of, but you have no idea what they are. Or even worse, there are things that you are not aware of, but you assume that you must be aware of them. So basically, in either case, you don't know about the need to investigate further to look into it. You remain unaware of the possibility to better yourself, to increase what you know, to reduce your ignorance. So these are the alternatives for line 1 to kind of consider so we can understand why Lao Tzu says that it's the highest. And there's more. There's a deeper layer of meaning in line 1. For line 1, the deeper layer points to the mystery, the essential mystery of the Tao. What do I mean by that? Well, something that we have talked about before was that the Tao isn't something that we can know completely. That is, at the heart of the Tao, there's infinite mysteries. There's always a part that is beyond human comprehension. Now, what Lao Tzu is saying with this line is that to understand and accept, to comprehend that we cannot know the Tao, that is actually a high level of wisdom and knowledge. Knowing this is part of understanding the Tao. It is essential to understand the Tao. Now that's going to sound pretty abstract. So let me ask everyone to think for just a moment, not about the Tao, but about science. Think about what we have seen, we as in humanity, in terms of science, scientific progress. When scientists go deep into the nature of reality, they uncover answers. They discover natural laws. They're able to express those mathematically. As they uncover answers, each answer raises more questions. Each answer reveals the next level of mystery, like peeling back layers of an onion. So, since the Renaissance of science, we, humanity, have learned a lot. But now we have even more mysteries in our frontier of knowledge. What is the grand unified theory that explains everything? What are the possibilities of reconciling quantum mechanics with the theory of relativity? So many questions. Now, the Tao is just like that. To understand and accept that we are forever questioning and forever questioning, that is wisdom. So to illustrate this idea, there's a story from Zhuangzi that talks about what happens when a seeker of knowledge The name of the seeker of knowledge is Tai Ching. Tai Ching traveled to the realm of Tao concepts in search of answers. Yes, you heard me right. He traveled to the realm of Tao concepts to search for answers. Indeed, he looked for the personifications of Tao concepts so he could speak with them and ask them his questions. So I think you can already see that this is not one of those historical tales populated by historical figures, but a story that was composed by Zhuangzi to make an important point. So the name of the story, as you can see in this slide, is Knowing the Unknowable Tao. And here is what happens when Tai Ching went to the realm of Tao concepts seeking answers. First, he went to the personification Wu Qiong, which means inexhaustible. So Tai Ching had his first conversation with Wu Qiong. He asked, "Do you know the Tao?" Wu Qiong, inexhaustible, replied, "I do not." So to continue that line of questioning, Tai Ching turned to Wu Wei, unattached action, and asked the same question. "Do you know the Tao?" "How about you? Do you know the Tao?" Wu Wei, unattached action, said, "I know the Tao." So Tai Ching followed up on this. He asked, "If you know it, do you have descriptions of the Tao?" "Yes." "Okay, great. What would be the descriptions? Please tell me." So Wu Wei, unattached action, said, "I know the Tao can be valued highly or lowly. It can be gathered together or spread apart. These are the descriptions that I know about the Tao." So by now, Tai Ching has gotten different answers, and he's wondering, how do I make sense of this? Next, he went to Wu Shi, no beginning, to help him clarify the difference between the answers that he got. So with Wu Shi, he relayed the conversations and he asked, Wu Qiong, inexhaustible, doesn't know, but Wu Wei, unattached action, does know. So who is right and who is wrong? Wu Shi, no beginning, said, "The one who does not know is profound. The one who knows is shallow. The one who does not know has insight. The one who knows sees only the surface." So he's basically saying that Wu Wei, unattached action, that's the person, that's the shallow one that only sees the surface level. Upon hearing this, Tai Ching sighed and said, "The one who does not know is actually the one who knows. The one who knows is actually the one who does not know. So who is the one to understand the knowing of not knowing?" So he's feeling perplexed. Wu Shi, no beginning, said, "The Tao cannot be heard. So what you hear is not the Tao. It cannot be seen. So what you see is not the Tao. It cannot be spoken. So what you talk about is not the Tao. Know that that which rules over forms is itself formless. The Tao should not be named." Wu Shi continues, the one who answers questions about the Tao does not know the Tao. The one who asks about the Tao ends up not learning about the Tao because the Tao cannot be asked. If asked, it cannot be answered. If you force a question, the question will be hollow. If you force an answer, the answer will be devoid of content. Those who provide empty answers to empty questions cannot observe the universe externally, nor can they know the ultimate source internally. Therefore, they cannot attain the level to scale the highest peaks, nor can they tour the great void. The end. This story packs a lot of concepts in a very small package. So I think it would be a good idea for us to talk about some of the things that was offered in the story. We have two sides, two complementary sides, those who think they know, those who know they do not know. And even before we go further, from the beginning of our discussion today, you can absolutely tell which is the side that is likely to be arrogant and which is the side that is likely to be humble. So in the conversation that we heard in the story, it is said that those who think they know, they are shallow. Their level of understanding is only at the surface. Those who know they do not know, which maps to line 1, the highest, they are the ones who are profound. And furthermore, those who think they know, they actually do not understand. They don't understand that the Tao is unknowable at its core. And those who know they do not know, they have clear recognition of that. So they actually do understand. Then it is also said that those who think they know cannot observe the universe. The universe meaning existence itself. So previously in the last chapter, we talked about the primary method of learning of the ancient sages. They look at what's happening around them. They observe existence itself. They look up at the nighttime skies. They look at heaven. They look at earth. They look at the human world. They observed the universe and they came to understanding and applying their observations. But those who are too full of themselves to think they know, they cannot do that. They cannot follow in the footsteps of the ancient sages. Now, those who know they do not know, they scale the highest peaks. What does that mean? So this is poetic language used by Zhuangzi. It means to attain the highest level of understanding that is humanly possible. So scaling the highest peaks is the metaphor for that. When you climb to the highest place of the mountain, that's it. You climb no further, even though you can see that there's still higher levels that you can go, that if you could fly, you could get up even higher. But at the highest peak of the mountain, the humanly possible understanding of the Tao, what that means is an expanded mind, an incredible perception of reality with the utmost clarity. This is just like someone taking in the panoramic view at the top of a mountain. That's the reason why the metaphor is being used. Scale the highest peaks. When you're there, you can see a lot. You can have the panoramic view, this incredible view. So then you can see that it corresponds to the other observation, that the other description of those who think they know, those cannot observe the universe or existence itself, whereas those who know they do not know scale the highest peaks and then look around, take in the view. Then lastly, those who think they know, they cannot know the ultimate source. The ultimate source is just another way to talk about the Tao. The Tao is the ultimate source where everything originated. And specifically, what we heard in the story was that those who think they know, they cannot observe the universe externally, that when they look out using their perceptions, their eyes, their eyesight, their vision, they cannot observe the universe. They don't really understand what they're looking at. Internally, they cannot know the ultimate source. They cannot reflect within and explore their internal connection to the Tao. So how about those who know they do not know? It is said in the story that they tore the great void. The great void is another synonym for the Tao. To tour the great void is the carefree wandering through all of existence. It means existence itself becomes like your own playground. And this is something that is open and available to those who cultivate the Tao, who understand the Tao in the proper way, as the ancient sages have pointed out. So that is the story of knowing the unknowable Tao. It's a very abstract story. There are many parts to it, many moving pieces, and it's actually one of the great stories to review from time to time. That story and Daodejing 71 together are the sort of thing in the Tao that the more you return back to them, the more you figure out for yourself. It's not because the story or the chapter have changed, it's because you have evolved. The more you experience life, the more you will get out of chapter 71 and the story itself. Now let's return to 71 and talk about the next line. Line 2, to not know but think you know is flawed. So just like before, I want to single out the first 3 characters, and then I want to break them down to show what they mean. So there is a little pause between the second and third character. So basically, it goes like 不知知病. And then to just focus on the first 3 characters, literally, not know, know. So this is an abbreviation, really. It's an abbreviated way to talk about being presumptuous. That is, you presume that you know something when you actually do not. Or to say it another way, in the same sequence of characters, is that you don't really know something, but you presume that you do. Another way to say it. So this is actually the combination of ignorance and arrogance. Why? Ignorance, you don't really know it, but presumption is the arrogance that you think that you are knowledgeable. And arrogance is always the factor that cuts us off from reality, makes us disconnected from reality. So what we think is true is actually not true in objective reality. Okay, let's move on. We want to explore the 4th character, which is Bing. So the Bing character, as I mentioned, this is where I hope this discussion can bring value to everyone when we study the Tao. You see, this is one of the most misinterpreted characters in the Daodejing. The pronunciation is like this. It's easy. Bing. It may be a little surprising But translators and authors books about the Daodejing usually lack the language skills to be able to understand it fully. It's actually another manifestation of what we're talking about, to presume that you know when you actually don't know. So this being is the main point of this entire chapter. We need to focus on this. Usually, authors of Daodejing books rely on other translations or a dictionary to figure out the meaning of words, and that can be very misleading to them. So this character means sick or sickness in modern Mandarin. If you were to look it up in the dictionary, that's what you will find. In this ancient usage, it's a little different. It specifically is the tangential meaning of flaw. So that utilization exists in modern Mandarin as well. Let me explain. First of all, I think it's easy to see that the context of sickness being a flaw in one's health. So flaw and sickness or illness are related in meaning. Now, in modern Mandarin, I can use the word 病 in a number of different ways. 生病, getting sick. But I can also use the same character in a different way to talk about something that is not an illness. I can say 毛病. That's not an illness. That's a problem, a fault, a flaw, a fault. And unlike English, this character can never mean disgust or revulsion. Let me explain what I mean by that. We're all very used to the expression, I am sick and tired of XYZ. In English, you can use sick in that way. You can say, for instance, if it's raining a lot, you can say something like, I am sick of the rainy weather. Well, you're not ill, but you're opposed, you are disliking the rainy weather. You might say, you might use the exact same expression for other aspects of life. If it's weather, you can say things like, I am sick of this humidity. You know, it's so sticky, it's so stuffy, I'm sick of it. And it doesn't have to be weather at all. It can be just about anything else that you dislike. You might say, I am sick of high taxes. I am sick of burdensome regulations. I am sick of long lines. I am sick of bureaucracy. I am sick of slow service. Any number of other things you don't like. Being, the word, the character we're talking about here, it doesn't have that meaning. This should be reiterated and emphasized and stressed as many times as possible. Being doesn't have that meaning. It can never be used that way. And this is what I was talking about when I said most authors of Daodejing books, they don't know that. In other words, they don't know what they don't know. They are not aware of this particular area of ignorance. And this leads to misinterpretation of Bing, and later on, Bing Bing. So let's move on to talk about the entire line. And by the way, in modern Mandarin, if you wanted to say something similar to I am sick and tired of something, you would not use the word associated with sickness. Instead, you would say it in ways like I cannot tolerate anymore, 我不能忍受, as a way to express the exact same sentiment. Okay, let's move on to the entire line. And the line, again, is to not know but think you know is flawed. So this presumptuous mindset, this is what Lao Tzu says or identifies as a flaw. And why is that? I think we've talked about how it is arrogant. We've talked about how that can lead to a disconnect with reality. Let's just go ahead and be specific about how this is line 2, the opposite of line 1. It's the very opposite. And we'll just go ahead and lay them out one by one. Number 1, as opposed to being humble, this means you lack humility. You think too highly of yourself. And then number two, you're not open to the possibility of being wrong. There's a certitude that you have when you don't know enough. When you don't know what you don't know, it can lead to you being very stubborn, holding on to dogmatic notions, and you are not open to the possibility of changing your mind. And that's related to the third point, which is that you do not feel you need to search for alternative answers because you think you know, what the right answer is. So this is what Lao Tzu is pointing out as a flaw for human beings. Now, this is a wise observation, but he was certainly not the only source of wisdom from ancient times. This wisdom existed in Eastern traditions, but also in the West. And that's what I'd like to take everybody to next. The Western perspective on knowing. The image that you see there, that is Mark Twain, perhaps the greatest humorist in American history. There's a quote that's often attributed to him, but may be from an anonymous source. The quote says, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." This is a very popular quote because it is so true. It is something that we see all the time when people are so sure about something that just ain't so. That's ultimately what gets you into trouble. So, as I mentioned, it's attributed oftentimes to Mark Twain because it sounds like it's something that he could have said. But when I say that it may be from an anonymous source, it is only because Mark Twain published a great amount of work. And this exact quote cannot be found in his books, essays, and speeches. And therefore, when quotes investigators look into this matter, they see that prior to his time, there were similar sayings that could be derived, but this may be a case where something is a quote is so good, so memorable, and so naturally attached to a particular historical figure that it gets assigned to that person, even though they might have said it in a different way. But let's stick to the meaning. It is the same wisdom that Lao Tzu has expressed. We human beings oftentimes get facts and opinions mixed up. What is actually the opinions that we hold, we actually think of as facts. So we hold them forth, we present them, we insist on them, and like we know we're right. This is there's no arguing against this. These are just the facts that I'm presenting, etc. I myself have had to make sure that what I'm expressing, is it an opinion or is it a fact? Historically, we've had so many examples when human beings were so sure about something, but it was actually just an opinion. How about this one? We know the earth is flat. Everybody can see that. Look at the ground. The ground is flat. Well, that turns out to be an opinion. That is a wrong opinion. Then here's another one. We know we're right in the center of the universe. Everyone can see that too. If you look at the stars, all the heavenly bodies, they all revolve around the earth. So we're right in the center of the universe. We have this blessed, special position in the entirety of the cosmos. Okay, well, that turns out to be an opinion, and it is the wrong opinion. When we learn more facts, we figure out that we are indeed not in the center of the universe, and we're not very special or unique at all. We're in one tiny, insignificant corner of the universe and not at the very center. Then, closer to home, we just absolutely know for sure that heavy objects fall faster than light objects. And isn't that obvious? Isn't that what everyone can see? I mean, just imagine it. Heavy objects fall quickly. Light objects, they float their way down. So that turns out to also not be true, and that's only because we don't understand concepts like air friction, or we did not used to have those concepts. So when you think about the wisdom behind this particular saying, whether from Mark Twain or someone else, you can see exactly how it matches the line that we're talking about today. To not know, but think you know, is flawed. Or, as Lao Tzu would say, 不知知病. Okay? And with this line, just looking at this line by itself, I think everyone can see that this has nothing to do with physical illness, nothing to do with health. It's not talking about sickness at all. Now, I want to switch from the Western perspective on knowing to the Eastern perspective on knowing. I'm going to bring in Confucius. And the reason why I want to bring in Confucius to talk about what he said, what he wrote, is that he lived at approximately the same time as Lao Tzu. He came after Lao Tzu. He was a younger man who regarded the older Lao Tzu as his master. But he studied from the same source. So a lot of people are not aware that what Lao Tzu studied and what Confucius studied was one and the same body of knowledge. They were both studying the Tao. They each expressed it in different ways. But many of the concepts they talked about were mirror images of one another. So one of the quotes from Confucius, this is one of, for people who actually know Confucius, this is one of the more frequently quoted sayings from Confucius. 知之为知之，不知为不知，是知也. What does that mean? What does it say? And here's a translation that's been available, that's been utilized and agreed upon for quite a few years. To know that we know what we know, and that we don't know what we don't know, that is true knowledge. Now, I want to bring in the Tao symbol yin and yang here because it is talking about two different sides. What we know, what we don't know. Complementary duality, knowledge, ignorance. Knowledge, genuine knowledge, lack of knowledge. So to understand what Confucius is trying to say, just think about the opposite of this statement. If you mix up what we don't know with what we do know, you get confusion. There are things, facts that are not at your command, that you don't know about, that you are unaware of. But if you mix it up with what you do know, then you assume that you know those things when in fact you do not. So Confucius is basically saying we need the clarity, we need the wisdom to do two things. Number one side of the yin and yang symbol, we want to truly master the knowledge that we do possess, that we have acquired. We've worked hard to gain that knowledge. We want to be sure we know what we do know. Then, on the flip side of the coin, on the other side of the yin and yang symbol, We want to recognize what we still need to explore and learn. If you're lacking that, then you don't even know where you can go to increase the knowledge that you possess. So if we don't possess this clarity, we make mistakes. We can end up discarding genuine knowledge that we have worked hard to learn, and that's a waste of time and effort, or we become blissfully unaware of all the areas where we still lack knowledge. You know, like we feel pretty good about ourselves without realizing our ignorance. Now you can see that this is an exact correspondence to the line, to not know but think you know is flawed. Same idea. And now I want to present yet another way to look at it to really drive home this point. As I mentioned, this is the most important thing in this entire chapter. This is the key to the kingdom. So I'm presenting a table here as a mini summary. Let me explain what this table is trying to portray. I've got the world divided up into two areas. There are aspects of the world that we know about, that we actually do understand. We know about those things. And then there are aspects of the world we still don't understand, that we're still ignorant of. So the world is divided into the known aspects and the unknown aspects. There's stuff we know, stuff we don't. Human beings can have awareness of what we know and what we don't know, or we can lack awareness of what we know and don't know. So human beings know about genuine knowledge or know about our lack of knowledge, but then perhaps we're unaware. We don't know that we knew something all along, or we don't know that we're lacking knowledge, which is bad news. So let me throw out some examples. So in the category that is the intersection of know, human beings know that they have genuine knowledge about the world, the things we can be sure about, time-tested and proven knowledge, the things that just work, the things that we apply to life, the things that we use every day, all the time. Those are the kind of genuine knowledge that we know we possess. Okay, well, what about the other possibility? What if we do actually know something, but we are not aware of it? Actual knowledge, we did not know we had an innate or instinctive knowing. There's actually quite a bit. We are all born with certain ideas, concepts, and instinctive knowledge, things that are sort of a birthright. So one example is from a healthcare provider, a doctor who cares for women who deliver babies. She specializes in that. She comments that after decades of experience assisting her patients, she comments that women have this ability to know what it is that they need and what it is that their baby needs. The mother has this knowledge. This is a very good thing. But then many women will second guess this ability, they question their own instincts. And sometimes it is because the maternal instinct is something new to them. And sometimes it is because they have this overwhelming desire to protect this amazing new life that now is dependent on the mother. Whatever it is, this doctor says, women should know that their maternal instinct is real, is strong, and is present. They should accept it. They should embrace it. They should listen to it. If you think something is wrong, it probably is. If you think everything is good, it probably is. So women have this ability. They're more capable, strong, and able than they give themselves credit for. They don't know how capable they are. They don't know about the genuine knowledge they possess sometimes. So that's just one example out of many. In your life, you're also going to come across cases, instances, where you know how to do something without realizing that it was in you all along. So that belongs in this category. Let's then take a look at the right-hand column, lack of knowledge. So when you know that you don't know about something, the things we know that are out there, but we do not understand them yet, this is a very good thing. It's good that we are aware of what we don't know so that we can go about finding out more, get more information about them. The reverse of that, the opposite of that, is we don't even know enough to realize how ignorant we are, how little we know. That is bad. That is not good. And on the right-hand side, the upper right-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner correspond to what we have studied today. To know that you do not know is highest. That's the combination of knowing about the lack of knowing, knowing about the lack of knowledge. And then correspondingly, it's not a good thing to not know, but think you know. And then the other possibility, of course, is to not even know that you don't know. Not aware of something that exists that you should find out more about. Either way, it's a flaw that can lead to even more ignorance. So this is the way that I want to present it. Sometimes I find that a graphical presentation has the ability to convey the central idea more effectively than just a whole bunch of text. So continue on with line 3 of Daodejing chapter 71. Line 3 says, only when one recognizes the fault as a fault. Let's talk about that. We've got two characters there, bing. These repeated characters are the key to the entire chapter. So one of them alone, bing, means sick, but in this context actually means flaw. So as I mentioned in Mandarin, bing, you can say 生病, that means sick, or you can say 毛病, that means flaw. Bing does not mean sick, nor does it mean flaw. Now, previously, we have seen many instances where in Mandarin, you've got two characters that are repeated twice for emphasis. This is a different usage. This is not the same as that. It's not an emphasis on sickness or flaw. So, as an example, in Mandarin, I can say that a door is open wide by repeating kai twice. I can talk about the door as kai. Here, bing does not have that emphasis, and let me talk about how it can be misinterpreted. There are too many authors of the Daodejing who incorrectly assume that it must mean sick of being sick because they think it means sick. If they think that it means sick, it's a sure sign that they're dependent on the dictionary to figure out what Chinese actually says. And as I mentioned, this is a perfect example of not know, but think you know. So a couple of different problems there. And then the other aspect, other than relying on the dictionary, is to not know that in ancient times, the same character can be used in a different context, which is not similar to the modern meaning. Okay, so if it is not being repeated for emphasis or to stress an adjective, what is it doing? What does it mean? Well, in this usage, bing, the first bing is a verb. And the second one is a noun. It's a verb and a noun. The first bing means to recognize, detect, or identify a flaw or fault. And the second instance is a noun, and that's simply a flaw or a fault. Like a problem, a defect. Together, bing means to see a flaw as a flaw, see a fault as a fault, a problem as a problem, a defect as a defect. And let me provide some examples here, because this isn't always the case with us human beings. We have, many of us, the bad habit of taking something negative about us and try to turn that into a positive. If I am stubborn and unreasonable, I may say that I am opinionated, and I try to cast it in a positive way. If I am indecisive, if I take a long time to make up my mind, I may say that I take all perspectives into account. If I am lazy and don't want to get things done, I may say that I am cautious. I want to take all factors into consideration before I act. If I am rash, if I am reckless and I rush into things, I may say that, well, it's just my nature to be bold. I am assertive. I am alpha. I have this quality, damn the torpedoes, I get things done. I may take pride in that. Well, in all of these cases, guys, I am not seeing my flaw as a flaw, a fault as a fault. If I don't see those as problems, I will never get around to improving them or changing them, even though I really should. That is the central issue here. This is what Lao Tzu is pointing out. It's got absolutely nothing to do with being sick of being sick. It doesn't say that. It can never mean that. That's a wrong interpretation. And what I have just said is not an opinion. That I know is a fact. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, line 3 says, only when one recognizes the fault as a fault. So let's talk about what that means in the Tao context. In the Tao, we know, we understand, nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. We are all works in progress. I think everybody would agree with that. We're all on the path. That's the reason why we gather around on Sundays to talk about this stuff. We're all in the process of working on ourselves to refine ourselves. So, yes, we all have flaws. Sometimes many flaws. But then Lao Tzu is saying that it's okay to not be perfect. The important thing is to recognize where we can improve. Lao Tzu is saying that the important thing is self-awareness, to know where you are lacking. So the reason why I spend time talking about the importance of this line is because I know that if you were to study the Tao in the West, you will come across very often and many times misinterpretations. In order to protect against that, I want to point out exactly what those erroneous interpretations are that you can possibly come across. So one author writes, first, realize you are sick. Okay, that's wrong. Bing does not mean sickness here. There is no first in this line. So this is not really a translation. It's making up a word that isn't in the original. Second, sages rarely ail because they hate ills. Okay, it doesn't even make sense. Bing does not mean illness here. And Unfortunately, none of us can be without illness just because we hate illness, because chances are we all hate illness, but we do become ill sometimes. And there's no sage in this particular line. The word sage does not appear. The first character is one, like a generic person. Now remember, the Tao is very practical. It's very true to life. If you see something here that makes no sense, oh, just because you hate illness, then that just means that you will rarely become ill. You know it doesn't match reality. If it has that mismatch with actual life experience, then you know something is wrong. And then frequently you see if one is sick of sickness, no, it doesn't mean sickness here, and there's no such expression in Chinese. Only by becoming sick of the sickness, same thing.病does not mean sickness here. There is no such expression in Chinese. So now let's take a look at someone who got it right. Is because he treats defects as defects. Correct.病means defect in this context. If this author uses problem, fault, flaw, those would all be acceptable. And out of so many who get it wrong, who's the person that got it right? Well, it's none other than Dr. Victor Mayer, professor of Chinese language and literature at the University of Pennsylvania. He actually does know Chinese, whereas so many do not. So moving on to line 4. Line 4 says, can one be without fault? This is a continuation of line 3. Only when one recognizes the fault as a fault can one be without fault. So I think we can see what it means. Being self-aware, hey, that is the only way that we can improve ourselves. In cultivation, in Tao cultivation, when we start on this journey, we initially may rely on teachers and fellow cultivators to point things out to us, to say that you may want to do something about this flaw that you have, this fault that you have, this issue that you have. So initially that may be the case. But you know that ultimately we ourselves are the ones who must take responsibility for our own cultivation. We have to recognize our own faults so we can work on them. We can't just continue to rely on friends and teachers, family members to let us know what we need to work on. We have to be more self-aware to be able to recognize them ourselves. So let me provide a couple of examples. I think that will make it clear. Everyday examples. Let's go to tardiness. So think of someone who's always late. I definitely knew of some individuals who were like that. And not only that, but always making excuses. Oh, the traffic was bad. Or perhaps the weather was bad. And nobody can do anything about the traffic, right? I mean, the traffic is just what it is. And weather, nobody can do anything about the weather. It's just what it is. Okay, well, these are excuses. Or, I had another meeting just before this one. And I've even heard, I'm late today because before attending this meeting, I had to hold a meeting with myself first. I needed to meditate. I needed to spend the appropriate amount of time for self-care. Well, in reality, I happen to know that when this person used that excuse, it was only because he had overslept. And then when he woke up, he was groggy, and it took him some time to get ready for the meeting. And so he characterized it as having a meeting with himself. Or in a similar way, there are people who will say things like, well, I was just going with the flow. And, my carefree wandering was leading me down a different path, and it caused a delay for me attending this meeting. that would be a misuse of the Tao to give oneself excuses. So this is definitely a flaw or a fault to be realized so that we can do something about it. And one day, the realization may hit that being late is rude. It's rude to everyone else in the meeting. And that rudeness is because tardiness forces other people to wait on you, which is the waste of their time. And people may not say it, but you can bet that they resent the tardiness. They resent the late arrival. You have reduced your value in that group by a corresponding amount. This realization, seeing the fault as a fault, seeing a flaw as a flaw, this realization leads to the possibility of the issue being addressed. It's the same thing with negativity. We all know people who are negative, the naysayers, the critics in our lives. They're always being cynical. They're always criticizing about one thing or another. They're always pointing an accusing finger to blame, to accuse. Just like the person who was tardy, they may come upon a realization one day. Before that, they're going to have excuses. Well, I'm careful, I'm diligent, I see more than other people, I have to point these things out or they will never get done. Excuses. But then one day, the realization may hit. Negativity is unproductive. That you can get better results by switching from the negative to the positive. Negativity leads to friction, contention, arguments. You may think that you must be right about something, but that doesn't address the ill will that you have created with other people. They still don't like your criticism. They don't like you being cynical. They don't like your accusations, your condemnation. People may not say it, but they will actively avoid the negative person. They go out of their way to not be around the negative person. Negativity is something that alienates people. And this realization leads to the possibility of the issue being addressed. I just want to say, before leaving this slide, that the Tao is all about observing patterns in existence, in nature, in life, in human interactions, in human dealings. What we're talking about here, everything that is showing in this slide, these are major recurring patterns we see everywhere all the time. So that's what makes this chapter particularly useful and practical to us. We are now nearing the top of the hour, so I'm going to jump ahead to the summary to cover the things that we talked about today. Takeaways from Daodejing chapter 71, part 1. Next time we'll do part 2. Today's talk was all about awareness and knowledge. These are different things. You can be aware of having knowledge or not having knowledge, or you can be completely unaware of the same thing. So because of the importance here, I want to ask everyone in this summary to examine your degree, your level of awareness. What are the unknowns of the Tao for you? Are you aware of them? What is the extent of your awareness about what you know and do not know? And then the follow-up question is, how will you expand your knowledge? How will you strengthen or clarify or seek more knowledge to expand, to reduce ignorance? So those are the questions associated with awareness. And then number 2, examine your faults. So it's not just examining your awareness of the extent of your knowledge, but also your awareness of where you have problems, faults, flaws, defects, character defects. What are some faults you see in yourself? And I hope the answer isn't nothing. I have no flaws. I am flawless. I hope that isn't the answer. Then the follow-up question to that is, what is the first fault that you feel you should work on? As with everything else, there's a sequence, there's a prioritization of everything. You can't do everything all at once, which means there must be something that you're going to work on before something else. So what would that be? For both of these questions, in regards to awareness and also in regards to personal faults, if you like, I would be more than happy to receive your correspondence on that, to get your thoughts on that, so that we can all cultivate together. I know that I have areas of ignorance, and it is time I too engage in that examination to think about where I still need to expand and strengthen my knowledge. I know all too well that I still have faults. It is time I identify them and then figure out which one to work on first. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.